Malik, I need to talk to you. Yusuf was steady, but his eyes as iceware storm. I stood there, frozen, my hands still on the doorframe. The summer heat clung to my skin, but it was nothing compared to the weight of his gaze. I managed to croak out, my voice sounding foreign, even to my own ears, about what didn't answer right away. Instead, Hess dipped inside. His presence filling the small space of my living room, the air felt charged like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. I closed the door behind him, my heart pounding in my chest though. Did we get here? It had started like any other summer day, the kind where Thesson hangs heavy in the sky and the world feels like it's holding its breath. I was sitting on the porch sipping iced tea one. I saw him walking up the driveway, Yusuf, my nephew, but not the boy. He remembered he'd grown taller, broader his features, sharper, the lanky teenager. Idlest scene had vanished, replaced by a man who carried himself with quiet confidence. I've been struck by it, how Mek. He changed, how much time had passed without me noticing. Hey Malik, he said, his voice deeper than I remembered. There was something in his tone, something unspoken, but I hadn't known how to place it then. Yusuf, I had replied, standing to greet him. This is a surprise. What brings you here? He'd hesitated just for a moment. I just needed to see you. Ethod seemed innocent enough at the time. A nephew visiting his uncle, but no standing in my living room. I realized Ethod was nothing innocent about it. Malik, he began again, his voice soft but firm. I've been thinking about this for a long time. About you, about us, the word hung in the air, heavy and loaded. I'm interest, trying to make sense of it. I'd always been his miner, his guide to one. Turn to when he needed advice. Buthus. This was something else entirely. What are you saying, Yusuf? I asked, me voice barely above a whisper. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Maneum, saying, I have feelings for you, Malek. Feelings I can't ignore anymore. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My chest tightened, my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't Supaceto. Happened, this couldn't be real, Yusuf. I'm your uncle, I said the words, feeling clumsy on my tongue. I know, Hare replied, his voice steady, but that doesn't change how. I feel there was a silence then, thick and suffocating. I could hear the clock ticking in the background, each second stretching into an eternity. My mind was a whirlwind, off, thoughts and emotions. None of them coherent. This can't happen, infinitely. Said more to myself than to him. We not, he asked, his voice rising lightly because of what people would think, because it's not normal. I didn't think an answer, or at least not one that felt right. The truth was, I didn't know what to think, didn't know how to feel of everything. I'd ever believed everything I'd ever known was being called into question. We'd ended up in the bathroom, off all places. It was cramped, the air thick with the scent of soap and steam. I'd gone and splashed water on my face to try and clear my head, but when I looked up, Yusuf was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Malik, he said, his voice barely audible. I know this is complicated. I know it's not easy, but I can't keep pretending I can't keep fighting how I feel. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. There was a part of me that wanted to run to shoot us down before it went any further, but there was another part I didn't want to acknowledge, that wanted to stay, that wanted to see where this would lead to. Seth, I trailed off, my words catching in my throat. He stepped closer, Hishind reaching out to brush against Manethi. Contact sent a jolt through me. Aspark that I couldn't ignore. I'm no tasking for anything, he said softly. Adjust. I needed you to know. I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him not as my nephew, but as a man who was standing in front of me, vulnerable and raw, laying his heart bare. I don't know what to say, I admitted, my voice trembling. You don't thave to say anything, he replied. Just think about it. We'd ended up back in Thalivine room, sitting on opposite sides off the couch. The silence between us was shivy, but not uncomfortable. It was thickened. Of silence that comes when there's too much to say and not enough words to say it. This changes everything. Aside. Finally breaking the quiet, does it Haveto? He asked, his voice soft. I looked at him, and for the first time I allowed myself to consider the possibility, the idea that maybe, just maybe, this could be something more, something real. I don't now, I admit it, but I think I need to figure this out. He nodded his expression, understanding take all that time you need, Malik. I'm not going anywhere. The rest of the afternoon had passed in a blur. We talked about everything and nothing about life, about family, about the future, and through each other was an undercurrent of tension thought neither of us acknowledged but could ignore as the sun began. Nephew stood to leave. I walked him to Theodore, my mind still reeling from a very thing that had happened. Thank Yao, said, turning to face me, for listening. For not shutting me out. You're my nephew Yusef, I replied, my voice firm. No matter what, I'll always be here for you, Henaded. But there was a sadness in high sighs, a longing that I couldn't quite place. Good night, Malik, he said, stepping out into the warm summer night. Good night, I replied, watching as he walked away. I closed the door, leaning against it. For support, my mind was a jumble of thoughts and emotions, none of them making sense. But there was one thing. I knew for certain, nothing would ever be the same that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My thoughts kept drifting back to Yusef too. The look in his eye swan, he confessed his feelings, the way his hand had brushed against mine, sending a spark through me. What does this mean? What does it mean for us? I didn't have the answers, but as I finally drifted off to sleep, one thought lingered. In my mind, this is only the beginning. The morning light filter, the blinds casting faint stripes across the hardwood floor, sat on the edge of my bed, my hands pressed into the mattress, the events of yesterday replaying in my mind like a loop. It couldn't escape Yusef's words, his voice way. He looked at me like I was nothing more than just his uncle. He shook my head, trying to dispel the thoughts, but they clung to me, stubborn, unrelenting. I made my way to Thekachan, the house quiet. Except for Theum of the refrigerator, the summer heat was already creeping in, heavy and suffocating. I poured myself a glass of water, my fingers trembling slightly around. The cold glass, the knock at the door startled me, and I near dropped it to Yusef. The thought came unbidden, and I hesitated before setting the glass down me heart. That in my chest as I walked tough door, each step feeling heavier thand. Last, when I opened it, there he was standing on the porch, the sunlight catching the sharp angles of his face, held older than I remembered, more a shard. When did that happen? Malik hesed softly, his voice carrying a weight that made my stomach twist. Can we talk? I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. The air between us felt charged like the stillness before for a storm. He followed to the living room, and we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between us both too small and impossibilist. I've been thinking, he began, high sighs fixed on his hands, which were clasped tightly in his lap. Abu Taya starde. About everything. I swallowed, me throat suddenly dry. Yusef, I just let me say this. He interrupted, his voice firm, but not unkind. He looked up finesse, gaze locking with mine, and I felt breath leave my lungs. I know this is complicated. I know it's unexpected. Booty can't keep pretending like I don't feel this way, like I don't see you as more than just my uncle. His words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Toyner, more than just my uncle. Thefries echoed in my mind, each repetition sending jolt through me. I wanted to look away to break the intensity of his star, but I couldn't. Why can't I don't know what to say. I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not something I ever imagined. Your family, Yusef, I know, he said, cutting me off again, and that's why this is so hard, but it's also why I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I needed you to know, to understand. His honesty was disarming. Andy found myself at a loss for words. How do I respond to this? I wanted to tell him that it was impossible, that we couldn't go down this path, but the truth, I wasn't sure. There was something in his confession that struck a chord deep within me, something I wasn't ready to acknowledge. Leaky said, his voice softening, I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to be honest about how I feel about us. The word lingered, but when us fragile and loaded with meaning. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, forcing me to confront emotions I'd buried long ago. Had, am I supposed to do with this, Yusef? I began, my voice trembling. I need time to process this, to understand what it means. He nodded, his expression stung. I understand. Take all the time I need. I needed you to hear. Mahi's words were like a balm, soothing the sharp edges of my anxiety. I felt a rush of gratitude for his patience, for his willingness to give me space, but then a thought. There was something else, something I wasn't ready to name. We sat in silence for while the only sound, the faint hum off the ceiling fan, the tension between us was palpable. but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged electric like the air before a thunderstorm. What happens now? I wondered, my mind racing with possibility. Thank you, I said, finally breaking dissonance with me. Honest for trusting me with this? He smiled, then a small tentative thing that made my chest ocker. Important to me, Malik. I wouldn't have said any of this if you weren't his words settled over me, warm and unsettling all at once. Important, Theward, felt inadequate. It's like it didn't quite capture the depth of what he wastering to say, but I understood I felt it too, even if I wasn't ready. To admit it, the rest of the day passed in a blur. Yusef stayed, but the conversation shift to safer topics, work, family, through other. It was easier that way, less fraught with tension, but beneath the surface, I could feel the unspoken words lingering, waiting to be addressed. As Thiessen began to set, we found ourselves in Thiessen standing side by side as we prepared dinner. The proximity was both comforting and unnerving, a reminder of the new dynamic between us. I could feel heat radiating from him, a steady presence that made it hard to focus. Malik, he said quietly, his voice breaking through the silence. Can I ask you something? I turned to look at him, my heart pounding in my chest. Of course. He hesitated, his gaze searching mine. Do you think, is there a chance this could mean something for us? His question caught me off guard, and I felt a surge of panic. Why say I wanted to tell him no, to shut this down before it could go any further, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself staring at him, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and longing. Yusef, I trailed off, my voice trembling. I don't know. I need more time. His expression unreal. I understand. Take all the time you need. But as I looked at him, I realized that time might not be an off. There was something here, something gundanal, and as much as I wanted to near it, I knew I couldn't. What happens now? I wondered, my mind racing. What do I do with this? We finished preparing dinner in silence, the weight of his question hanging between us, but as we sat down to eat, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There was so much left unsaid, so much to figure out, and as I looked at Yusef, I knew that whatever came next, it would change everything. The summer heat pressed against the windows of my small house, the air thick and unmoving. I sat in the couch, staring at the untouched plate of food in front of me. My mind was a whirlwind, a storm of emotions. It couldn't quite untangle. Yusef sat across from me, his eyes fixed on his own plate, though I doubted he was any hungrier than I was. The silence between us was heavy, charged with things inside, something that neither of us quite knew how to address. I glanced at him, taking in the sharp angles of his face, the way his shoulders filled out this shirt, the quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from him. He's not a boy anymore, I thought. The realization hitting to me harder than I expected. Nephew, I had once known the energetic kid who used to cling to my leg and beg for stories, had grown into a man. A Monwo had just confessed something that had left me reeling. Uncle Malik, Yusef said, suddenly, his voice cutting through silence like a knife. He looked up at Amma, his gaze intense, almost searching. Can we talk? I mean, really talk. I swallowed, heard my throat dry. You've already said a lot, Yusef. I'm still trying to make sense of it. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together. I know, and I know this isn't easy. For you, it's not easy for me either, but I can't just leave it like this and need to know. I need to know if there's a chance. If you feel something. To his words hit me like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. How do I answer that? I thought, me, mind racing. How do I even begin to unravel what I'm feeling? Malik, he said softly, his voice tinged with desperation. Plays. I stood up abruptly, the motion startling us both. I need a moment. I stammered, and before he could respond, I was making my way to the bathroom. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it, as I tried to catch my breath. Me reflection in the mirror stared back at me, wide-eyed and flustered. What are you doing? I asked myself, what are you running from? But I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that every time I looked at Yusef, I felt something I couldn't name. Something that made my chest tighten and my thoughts spiral. It was a feeling I'd been trying to ignore. Topish down, but now it was out in the open and there was no going back. There was Asafat knock on the door and I stiffened. Malik. Yusef's voice came through low and hesitant. Are you okay? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. You can't keep hiding, I told myself. You have to face this, you have to face him. Slowly I opened the door. Yusef was standing, his expression a mix of worry and something else. Couldn't quite place for a moment. We just looked at each other, the air between us crackling with tension. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to push you. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I nodded, my throat tight. I know, and I'm not running away. I just don't know how to handle this. I gestured between US's motion. Vague but charged with meaning, he stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine.
It's okay to not have all the answers. I don't either, but I do know one thing, whatever.
This is whatever we're feeling, it's real and sent a shiver down my spine, real, that was through that had been haunting me since Heifers confessed, because deep down I knew Hui was right. Right, there was something real here. Something that went beyond the roles we had always played in each other's lives, and that terrified me. Seth, I said, my voice shaking. This isn't simple. We're family. Popo will talk, they'll judge, they'll ite and care. He interrupted, his voice firm. Spent so long worrying about what other people think, about what's expected of me, but I can't do that anymore, not when I know how I feel about you. Stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. But what if I don't know how? Phil, what if I'm scared of what this means? He reached out his hand, gently brushing against mine. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through my entire body. Then we'll figure it out together, said softly. We'll take it one step at a time, but I need you to be honest with yourself. His words hung in fear. Between us a challenge and a promise seal. At once I looked down at our hands, as contrast between his youth and my age suddenly stark. But in that moment it didn't matter. All that mattered was Theoe. His touch made me feel the ways. Presence seemed to ground me in a way nothing else could. Yusef, it whispered, my voice barely audible. I didn't know what this means. I don't know what comes next, but I know that I feel something I've never felt before, and it scares me. Step a closer, his body now just inches for. My night scares me too, he admitted, but I'm not going anywhere, not unless you tell me, Toy. Looked up at him, my breath catching in my throat. His eyes were intense, filled with a mix of hope and fear that mirrored my own. This is it. The moment you decide what you want, and then before I could second guess myself, I leaned in, closing distance between us. Our lips met in a kiss that was tentative at first tension, but quickly deepened as through it of everything we had been holding back finally broke free. It was mess-encompassing, and everything I had never allowed myself to imagine, but it was also right in that moment. I knew that whatever we were stepping into, what our challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The air was thick with Thuit of what had just happened. My heart was still racing, my lips tingling from the kiss that had shattered everything. I thought I knew about us. Yusef stood close, his breath steady, Buchallo, his eyes searching mine for something. Approval, reassurance, maybe even forgiveness. I couldn't tell all. Iknu was that the room felt too small to quiet, as if the walls were closing in on us, trapping us in this moment. Malik, he said finally, his voice soft but firm. We need to talk, really. Talk. And nodded, though my mind was still reeling. Gia. I managed to say, my throat dry. Let's go sit down. We moved to the living room, the space between us now charged with an energy I couldn't name. Yusef sat on the edge of the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped neatly together. I took the armchair across from him, sinking into it as if it could somehow ground me, but it did nothing. Could I need you to understand something? He began, his gaze steady on men. This what just happened? It's not just some impulsive thing for me. I've been feeling this for a long time, Malaclong, longer than I even realized. Swallowed hard, my chest tightening. You, Seth, it's a lot you have talk. Know that, I mean, we're family. You're mine. A few this changes everything. I know it does, he said, his voice tinged with frustration. Do you think I don't know that? Malik, you're more than just Munkle to me. You always have been Urith person. I look up to the one I trust more than anyone, and I think you feel same way about me, or at least you could. I looked away, my eyes drifting tuth window where the sun was beginning, toe set, casting long shadows across Thorum. He's not wrong. I thought, but that doesn't make this any less complicated. It's not that simple. I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. There's so much at stake here. Our family, our roles. The way people see us, this isn't something we can just dive into without thinking about the consequences. I'm not saying we should, Yusef replied, leaning forward. His intensity palpable. I'm saying we need to stop pretending that this isn't real, that there's nothing Harimelik. You kiss me back, you can't tell method didn't mean something. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. Who was right? I had kissed him back, and I thought meant something, but what does this mean for us? For me, Yusef, I sighed, finally opening my eyes to meet his. I'm not saying I don't feel something, but I need time to process this, to figure out what it means. I can't just, I'm no tasking you to decide, right? Now Heiner interrupted, his voice softer now, almost leading. I'm just asking you to be honest with yourself, with me. We can talk at these, Slomik. We don't have to rush and Tony thing, but we can't ignore it either. Exhaled sharply, running a hand through me hair slow. I repeated the word, feeling foreign on my tongue. I don't even know what that looks like. It looks like Thish, said, gesturing between us, talking, buying. Honest, letting ourselves feel without running from it. That's all I'm asking for. I looked at him, and it hit me. Oh my God. He'd grown, not just physical height, the sharp angles of his face, and the strength of his posture were indeniable, but emotionally he wasn't the boy I'd known anymore. He was a man confident and determined, and he was looking at me with an intensity that wasn't possible to ignore. Okay, I said, finality words slipping out before I could stop. It will take it slow, but Yusef, I need you to understand that this isn't going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of challenges. A lot of things we'll have to figure out, I know, he said. Asmal smiled, tugging at the corner of his lips. But we'll figure it out together, right? I hesitated, then nodded. Right? Theron fell silent again, but this time Thieselance felt different, less heavy, more hopeful. We sat there for a long moment, neither of us speaking, just letting Thuida of our decision settle between. Usmalik, Yusef said, finally breaking Thieselance. Can I ask you something off course? I replied, though my stomach tightened at the uncertainty in his voice. Do you think Thies could ever work between us? I looked at Theme, my heart aching at the vulnerability in his eyes. I don't know, I admitted, Beautium. Willing to try if you are, he nodded, a smile widening just a little. I'm in all the way. I felt a strange mix of relief and fear wash over me. Relief that we're finally being honest with each other. In fear of what this meant for our future, but there was something else too, something warm and unfamiliar, like the first rays of sunlight. Breaking through a storm, Yusef, I said softly, my voice trembling just slightly. If we're doing this, if we're really doing this, we have a toe. Be careful, not just for us, but for our family. For everyone who cares about us. I know, he said, his tone serious now. I'm ready for that, but Malik, I'm not going to hide this. I'm not going to impress that you're just my unclean more. I can't, I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. I don't want you to but behave to be smart about this. We have to take it one step at a time. He reached out then, his hand brushing against mine, sending a jolt of electricity out my harmony step at a time. He repeated, his voice steady together. I looked down at our hands, the way his fingers curled around mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't allowed Missif to feel in years. Hope together. He whispered, my voice barely audible. He squeezed my hand gently, his touch grounding me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. Malik, he said, his voice low and soft, I'm not going to let you regret this. Promise. I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't think I could ever regret you, Yusuf, but it's going to change everything. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. Ikno, but sometimes change is exactly what we need. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling over me. He was right. This was a turning point, a moment that would define us in ways we couldn't how to imagine. But as I looked into high size, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together, Yusuf. I began, my voice trembling with the weight of my next words. If we're really doing this, I need you to promise me one thing. Anything, Hest. His gaze unwavering, his hands still firmly holding mine. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. Promise, method. We'll always be honest with each other, no matter how hard it gets. Haunted. A small, determined smile playing on his lips. I promise for a moment we just sat there, our hands intertwined, dissonance between us filled with the very thing we hadn't yet said, but then slowly, almost hesitantly, Yusuf Linadi, his face into his from mine. His breath warm against my skin. Malik, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Can I kiss you again? My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment I hesitated to wait, if everything crashing down on me. But as I looked into his eyes, filled with a vulnerability and longing that mirrored my own, I knew my answer. Yes, he whispered, my voice trembling.